Hey everyone, welcome to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda. What you're about to watch is a recent clip from a Daggerheart Livestream where we gave advice to first-time GMs who may need a little help with running Daggerheart. Enjoy. So our next topic is learn and teach your players to love fear and failure. This is a situation where we have been trained from very simulationist concepts to want to avoid failure at all costs. And quick little mini tangent here. Of course we have been. And a lot of times people think that players min-max because they don't want to die or because, they never want to fail. I think that's actually not true. I think players don't want to let their other PCs, their other players down. In most D&D games, when you fail a roll, it means you are that much closer to death. It means that you are that much closer to losing. It means that you have let the players go. You've let the players down. It also means that if you're playing in a combat game, if you miss in most versions of D&D and most versions of Pathfinder, when you miss, you do 0 damage, nothing happens. So there's a very strong incentive here to want to hit because of course you want something to happen. So here is my radical advice to you. When you fail in this game, it means that your character did not achieve the success that they wanted, and that per the rules of the game, the GM can now make a move. And one could argue that they can make a hard move. What I tell you is that sometimes, even when the players fail, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should just immediately make a GM move, like spotlight an adversary, that then gets them attacked. Because what they are going to learn then is that whenever I make an attack, if I roll low, I'm going to not only miss and do no damage, but then the GM gets to immediately attack me. And so there's a strong chance here that the players will actually feel like failure is worse in Daggerheart than it was in D&D. Because in D&D, they'll say, well, in D&D, when I miss, I didn't do anything. And then it was the next person's turn. That's better than I missed, and then the GM got to attack me? Now, granted, the monsters don't get an initiative order, so they don't go, right, normally. So obviously that's not exactly true because otherwise the monsters would never go. So there's that element to be put there. But part of the key to teaching your players to learn to love fear and failure is quite simple. When your players fail, or if they roll with fear, you make a move. And that move does not always have to be the adversary attacks. Sometimes the move could be something like this. You and I are playing. You describe your character going in to take out a group of minions. You swing your sword or whatever. You fail. So you don't hit. And you fail with fear. I get to make a move. And I get a fear point. My move might be like the minions swarm around you and begin hacking and slashing their way through you. If you want, mark 2 stress, and you can kill them all. That was my move. I got to make whatever move I wanted to make as a GM. And my move was to offer that player an opportunity with a cost. Why? Because they failed. What they wanted to do was kill the minions with no cost. They wanted to kill the minions, I'm sure, with hope. Mark a hope point, succeed. The GM doesn't get to go. That didn't happen. But you know what? These are minions. That character, that's a badass warrior. I don't want him to miss. I don't want him to do nothing. I want there to be consequences for his failure. I want to, at this point in the scene, I want to give him something to do with. Learn to use failure to highlight how awesome your players are. Don't always just go to the radically hard extreme. The biggest mistake I have seen with people in this game is, especially in combat, is whenever the players fail, or whenever the players roll with fear, or whenever the GM spends a fear token, is, and a monster attacks, and a monster attacks, and a monster's attack, and a monster's attack. I think that's one of the more boring things that you can do. So ultimately, I think what you should do is use failure as a way to reframe the character's success. Now, look, that doesn't mean that sometimes shit goes wrong and shit goes bad, but as the director, as the game master, you need to feel that out. And for all of you, those who are like, how do I know? You got to learn. You got to feel your vibe. I know that sounds terrible, but you just got to do it a lot. Look into your player's eyes. It's one of the reasons why I say it's hard for me to run games not in person. It's why it's definitely impossible for me to run a game if I don't have cameras up. I read body language. It's a big part of how I game master. So, especially with these type of games. So, fear or failure doesn't mean that the character was wrong to act. It simply means that the stakes are real and we should be leaning into that. Failure should mean interesting consequences. It should not feel like a punishment. Sometimes a failure with fear against, let's say it's a massive dragon, right? And your hero kind of comes up, maybe even with a little bit of swagger. Again, we still want our heroes to feel like they're the protagonists, right? That they're the heroes of the day. But they roll a fear with the failure. That's one of those, like, again, I always think back to movies. It's like when Thor, swings his that big hammer at the Hulk, and the Hulk just catches it, and then like moves the hammer out of the way to look at him, and then like Thor goes, "I'm sorry," and then the Hulk just smashes him in the face, right? And just that he goes sailing across the thing. Sometimes the player runs in and against a dragon and rolls failure with fear, and you just describe the dragon as just like stopping their attack cold, crushing them into the ground, and then throwing their body, and they're like tumbleweeding across the battlefield, skidding to a halt as their armor buckles and breaks against a nearby boulder, right? That scene is still satisfying because something cool happened. And one of the hardest things that you can master as a game master is making the players feel cool in defeat. Think about some of your favorite movies. Think about some of your favorite animes. Sometimes one of your favorite things is seeing your awesome favorite hero character take a beating and get back up. It's seeing them kind of get destroyed a little bit, because it means that when they come all the way back, it feels way more satisfying. Right? Very rarely in any of the movies that we watch or animes or books do the heroes just like win constantly without never failing, right? They fail a lot, actually, like all the time, a lot. And the key difference is we just don't make them look like little bitches. So if you are treating the fear as a complication, a twist, a shift, right? Encourage players' emotional actions too. Ask them a question. I know it seems crazy in the middle of a spotlight, right? If the player fails a roll, and one of the things that you can do as a move in the book, I actually don't have the PDF open. What a mistake that is. One of the GM moves that they recommend in Daggerheart is basically to, ask the player how they feel about it. And you might do that even in combat. Obviously, you have to sort of feel out the pacing of the moment and the tension in the scene. But think about some of your favorite combats, your favorite action scenes from movies. Sometimes there's these little moments where we get to see how a character is responding to their failure. And that teaches us about that character. And we make it more of a character moment than you're losing the game, you're losing the losing the fight moment, right? So again, focusing on the potentially narrative effects of fear and failure, but also don't be afraid to making soft moves and maybe even allowing the player success even on a failure, but have it cost something. And maybe ask them, do they want to pay that cost, or will they pay that cost? And there's no right or wrong answer. You could ask them to do whatever you want, and they could say yes, and they could say no, but at least giving them everything that you could want. Now, Black Lodge Gaming, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say you should probably never play Daggerheart, or maybe, I don't know, any narrativist or Powered by the Apocalypse game, because it does not seem like this is your cup of tea. But you won't. All right, fair enough. I really respect that, because again, in real life, right, we always say you learn from your mistakes, but that doesn't mean we're encouraged to fail. Right. But in these type of games, because we're trying to reflect the sort of pacing and structures of our favorite stories, failure is really, really important. All right, fair enough. You enjoy the discussion. Lord Kyler says, if the player doesn't take you up on the offer, 2 stress to kill the minions, is that still considered resolved? They just miss and move on? Or do you move to something else? I consider it resolved and I move on, Lord Kyler. I might make a really soft move. I might cut this. I might cut over, unless I spend a fear token. I might cut over to Krister and I might say, okay, Lord Kyler is still surrounded by minions. They're fighting tooth and nail. Neither side seems to be gaining the advantage. Krister, the black dragon, just hurled Aelia across the battlefield. Krister, what do you do? I'm always re-updating the fiction with my players and then asking them, what do they do? But as far as I'm concerned, that you missed, I made a move, which was give you an offer. You didn't take me up on the offer. The move is over. I could spend a fear token if I want to, I don't know, activate the dragon again or do something else with a different monster or do something of that nature. But as far as I'm concerned, that's my move. Why would I waste my move that way? I don't know. Why would you waste your move spotlighting your adversary? What are you going to do? Kill all the party members? You can't. Okay. There's no point to trying to win. You can't win. There's no losing and there's no winning. The only thing we could do is create awesome, cool, badass moments. It doesn't matter. But that is very different from the way that we're learned. We're used to thinking in terms of action efficiency and action economy and how can I get the most DPS out of my monsters so that my players feel terrified. That's not what this game is about. So ultimately, remember that outside of failure, players might have actually really high bonuses between helping and trait bonuses, but 47% or something of the rolls are going to be with fear, regardless of whether the players succeed or not. So, you need to sort of learn to embrace fear and failure. And one of the ways that you can do that is by not making it so horrible and not making it so punishing and turning fear into more of a, it's like a backhanded compliment. It's like, okay, that was nice, but you kind of took a dig at me. And in that respect, I think players can start to really, engage with that a little bit more. And giving them choices. Players always feel empowered by choices. Like if I told the players in that instance before where Lord Kyler was surrounded by the minions, misses, and I say, you start to do battle with it, but you can't gain the upper edge. Do you push yourself to destroy them, or do you hold back and conserve and keep battling with them? Do you want to spend 2 stress to kill them, or not? I'm giving them a choice. I could have said, Lord Kyler, mark 2 stress and the minions are dead. That isn't a valid option. I could do that as a GM move, but I'd rather give Lord Kyler the choice, because if I give them the choice, they will feel empowered. And a big part of PBTA and big part of my philosophy is giving players agency and making them feel empowered to make choices. And that is an example of one. So I'm a big fan of making them. Now, sometimes the choice may be pointless. I remember, Smendon, if for whatever reason that came up and they said, I only have 1 stress left, I might say, that's fine. It'll make you vulnerable. And I think that's enough of a price. Or I might say, fine, mark a stress and a hit point. And, they say, well, can I mark an armor instead? And I might go, of course. By the way, everything we're just doing there is GM moves and spotlights going back and forth. We're not out of time yet. So again, lean into it, make it cool. If you make fear and failure shitty for your players, then they are going to fear it. And they are going to dislike it. And they're going to dislike it probably even more than they disliked it in D&D. So instead, you need to look for ways to make those fear and failure moves soft, but also sometimes hit them with the hammer. But oftentimes I like to kind of put that back into, to their hands. in one of our Patreon bonus videos, we played a Dungeon World game a long time ago. Bob got kicked off a cliff. And I said, Bob, you begin tumbling to your death. I go, what do you do? And he goes, he looks at his equipment. He goes, I'm going to grab my crowbar from my backpack and use it to grab onto the edge of the cliff. And I said, awesome, cool, you do that. But you either drop your weapon or your backpack. Pick. Now, he gets to make a choice. Ooh, it's a shitty choice. But it's still a choice that he gets to make. And believe it or not, like if you give people a choice, it's like the idea of the Matrix, right? If you give people a choice, even at an unconscious level, they are much more likely to accept your fake reality that you've kept them in. So, all right. So that's about fear and failure and about embracing it. And again, the key is to be softer with your moves, to give players choices, and to make sure that they still feel cool and they look cool while they are missing. If you just say, you slip on a banana peel and you miss, and then the enemy ground pounds you and does critical damage, I'm going to activate him again, and he does critical damage, the players are going to quickly figure out that failing and fear sucks, and they would be afraid and avoid rolling dice at all costs.